So apparently,
So are we live? Are we live now?
well, we're gonna, yeah, I think we're definitely live now.
Are we?
Apparently, you have to hit two different go live buttons. There's
Two buttons.
there's one in the bottom left, and then after you click
Okay.
that one, another one comes up to say go live. And I was just called a couple of things by my wife that I'm not the smartest guy in the room. And the thing is, I'm the only guy in the room. So when you're not the smartest guy in the room and you're by yourself, that's not good. So
Right.
anyway, the very first part of the video, you actually see Jen in here, and I don't hope she didn't come off on the audio telling me how stupid I was. But anyway, and she knows
So
that I am. But
just
she
check.
married me.
We are live, right?
Well, yeah, I can see that we're live now.
Okay.
So this tells you how good we are with all this stuff. We were supposed to be live a week ago on Wednesday, and we were talking up for 2 days. We're talking about when we're going to go live, when we're going to live. We scheduled it, and we were actually on doing a different recording at 1 hour prior to the start time of the wealth debate last week. And for whatever reason, we got off of that recording, went our separate ways until somebody actually sent a message to me. Until somebody actually sent a message to me, I didn't know that we forgot about it, which is a day later.
Buddy. It's the fans. You got to do it for the fans.
Well, and I find it interesting that there are people right now commenting that bless your soul to be with this guy, Jen. That's not good. I mean, let's be, Jen's a lucky gal is what I always thought.
Yeah.
But hey, what I think is lucky and she thinks is lucky is probably two different things.
Well, I don't think they were saying that when they see you walk together, buddy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry. But I get that too. So, and that's a blessing for me. And I'm sure it is for you that they're like, what you doing with that guy? So
before Sam gets started, just a couple of things on housekeeping, and then he'll start talking and it'll be 20 minutes in. Please say hello in the chat box. I'd love that. I see people saying hello. Rob Prout says hello. Wendy is telling Jen that she's the luckiest person in the world. Actually, she didn't say that, but that's what I'm saying. So anybody else say hello. We love to get the interaction going back and forth. If you have questions, throw them in the chat box. I'll make comments. Sam will talk and I'll be commenting in the chat box back and forth to you. So with that being said, Sam, you're going to talk a little bit about money and unemployment. We can talk about unemployment.
Yeah,
I think about the $600 stimulus. What were you going to talk about?
Yeah, there are a couple things I think in the news. The $600 stimulus was released. They're still talking about an additional $1,400 up to $2,000. That's still held up with the Democrats and the Republicans. Me and people were just talking about that. Depends who you want to blame for that not happening. But it's a one-time shot, which is considerable when you talk about the population of the U.S. But well needed for sure. I think that there's a mounting strain on the economy, both in the U.S. and Canada, around the world, really, with the shutdown. There's not really, the GDP is going to get killed for this year, which is the gross national product. The wealth created is what it measures. And we're probably going to see some relatively low numbers, historic numbers, really, for GDP in most countries around the world. I don't think anybody's going to escape that. And of course, we see unemployment staggering rates. I would say they were much worse. I think the peak in April of this year was 14.7 in the U.S. Briefly, it's sitting around 6.7 last reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. In Canada, we're sitting around 8.5, which is actually down from November, which was 8.9. Slight improvement. Clearly that the number is big. And if you're not familiar with the unemployment statistics or what they mean or what they measure, let me give you some relative understanding that might help you. Now, I think everyone understands what it means to be unemployed, which is basically you're not being paid by someone, employed by someone and being paid. So you're on some sort of unemployment, registered for unemployment. That's how you're measured. And something that's odd when I started learning about unemployment was that full employment or healthy employment in Canada or the US is around 3.5 to 4.5%. So say 4% is considered full employment. Now, for someone to hear that, first time I heard that, I thought that was ridiculous. Why would 4%? That means 4% of the population is not working. But it's considered full employment because anything lower than that, once you get down to 3 and 2%, it's actually bad for the economy. You wouldn't want 100% employment in a country. And when you hear that, you think that's insane. Of course, why wouldn't we want 100% of the people employed? The problem is the economy gets too hot and it becomes extremely expensive for employers to employ people because the market's so hot, people don't stay at their jobs. They take better offers. We used to make the joke, somebody comes in late, boss says, "Hey man, you're late. You can't come in late." And the guy says, "Hey, see ya," and he just leaves. He quits on the spot and goes to the restaurant or the service or even construction site down the street and gets hired on the spot. When it gets really, really hot, this has happened. Fast food places were giving signing bonuses for people to work there. Now you got to imagine for the economy, for people, it's great because they can get top dollar and they don't, job security is not a concern. The dilemma is that it's unsustainable because the business owners are not seeing, because they're paying so much more for their employment, they're not seeing that to their bottom line. They're actually losing money because they have to pay such a high labor cost to service the same product and services. Now they do go up, and there is a little burst, and people can afford more because they're getting paid more. But there's a limit to that. You can't just keep going up and up and up. It's unsustainable. So they don't want a 0% unemployment rate. They want somewhere around 3.5 to 4.5 is considered full employment. That's somebody, in that kind of range in the economy, someone's, he's released from a job or quits a job. And 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later, they're in another job, 8 weeks, they're not off for a year or 2 years at a time. This is what we're probably going to see some of happening in this new economy as people readjust and shift to do new opportunities, right? New employment. The concern when we're talking about unemployment is the impact on the economy, like real estate and the stock market, right? Because you would assume high unemployment means less money in the system, money flow is down. But we're seeing quite the opposite. We're seeing the stock market again making record highs, which is just insane. And you see real estate I was just reading in the Global Mail that in the last 4 weeks, Pep, you ready? I think it was last 4 weeks, real estate's gone up like 5% in 4 weeks. So unbelievably huge surge. The confidence in real estate is record highs. Hasn't been this high in like 4 years. It's crazy that people are this confident, considering the unemployment where it is and unemployment in the future. So the big driver was interest rates. We talked about this. Interest rates, lowering the interest rate increases the affordability of property, which unfortunately for most people doesn't get them more house. They're just paying more for the same house. So we see property values, capital appreciation just skyrocket in a short period of time. Unfortunately, that's, again, unsustainable. So we talked about this too. The government has a couple tools that they can use. They can drop the interest rate. It can go to zero or less than zero. Yes, it can. It's happened and is happening around the world in different countries. They can extend the amortization rate. They can reduce the amount of money required to buy it. And of course, they can play games with the your credit bureau, your credit score, what qualifies. 640 pretty much qualifies you. 640, 650 across all the banks. You don't really, you don't need a great, credit rating. Now that's changed a little bit with COVID and stuff. They're asking for a little bit more, I think, and they're being more critical of it. But ultimately, that's one of the tools they can use. They can lower that rate or the requirement, because ultimately the banks, when they issue these mortgages, they have insurance on them. It's the insurance companies that decide, does this person qualify? The bank could take that risk on their own, but if you're putting a small percentage down, they want that insured by someone else. So to get them qualified for that, there's requirements. So both the United States and Canada. I mean, and it's around the world, Europe too. Europe's hit harder, much harder, and they're suffering. They're suffering a considerably worse state. We're very fortunate as Canadians to be partnered and attached to the U.S. We really are, for the economy. We really are, because if there's one economy I would bet on anytime, is the United States. Like, I would bet on that economy anytime, anywhere. It's just, the economy is unbelievable, and it's really driven by the greatest asset and the greatest commodity in the U.S., which is not oil, which is not wheat or corn or I don't know what else you can think of. I can tell you what it is. It's consumption. The United States consumes better, more per person than anybody else. You don't have to convince an American to buy a second and third TV, right, Pip?
Well, and that's such an interesting thing, because what we were really going to talk about was supply and demand.
Yes.
As long as there's demand for something, that is going to continue to probably create increased price pressure unless the supply of it gets so high. And so the fact that the US is and we're called a consumption society, and
Yes.
that's really what we're great consumers, right, wrong, or indifferent, we're good consumers. And that has spurred the growth of everything that we've ever done in our society. And, we were talking about this, and I don't even know what years some of this stuff happened, but if you go back and, a lot of people get upset with these really wealthy people like Getty and Rockefeller and Vanderbilt and Carnegie. They took some serious risk with oil, with railroads and things such as that to really go big, and it paid off for them. But what you don't hear about is and I'm going to guess, tens of thousands of people that tried to do things and went belly up or bankrupt, and you don't hear about them. And right or wrong, I'm not saying that's a bad or good thing. The fact that there's always another consumer being born and another consumer, the interesting about the U.S. and Japan's a good economy to study always. Japan, great economy up until the early 90s. And then what they saw was a population decrease. And when you have population aging and decreasing, and when I say aging, really quickly aging in Japan, it lowered the demand so much that they got into a point where they were actually going in the other direction, even though from the 50s to they were literally decimated after World War II, literally decimated after World War II. And within 40 years, they completely rebuilt, and they were challenging the US. They were the second biggest economy up until the early 90s, and then China and some of these other places overtook them. But it's because of demand. It's because we're consumers. And as long as we keep consuming, whether it's, and sometimes it's foolish consumption. I'm not saying, there's way too many people that are, consuming the wrong things, bad things, whatever it is. And we're not going to get into all of that. But I really think as long as we see demand for things, and there's going to be some places where you're going to miss the demand. Somebody just made a comment on here, a Floridian, 950 people a day moving to Florida right now. Yeah. They're moving from somewhere. A lot of those places are probably going to be some of your Manhattan, New York areas where people don't want to live on top of each other anymore. They want a little more space. And so I think you're going to start to see some areas are going to see a little bit of a correction, whereas other places are going to see a big boom. Texas, I think you're going to see a big boom all across it. Some other places I could give you thoughts on. I think Boise, Idaho is going to be knocking. Denver is getting so expensive that the people that were moving from California can't even afford Denver anymore. So they're going to have to go to places like Boise, Idaho, maybe Bozeman, Montana, some of these other places that are similar to Denver in weather, style of life, a lot of outdoors things. But it's just the cost is getting so high in Denver because of all the Californians and moving there. And I think that's going to continue to happen. The outflux of people from California, we're going to continue to see that. And I don't want to get into the politics of anything. We're just starting to see, we've seen it for a number of years. California has a net decrease every year of population. And that's because they want to go somewhere else, a lot of people. And that's giving rise to places like Denver, Colorado, Boise, Idaho, Albuquerque, New Mexico, even Oklahoma City, Dallas, and places like that. So it really comes down to demand. We're not even debating. We're completely agreeing on this. And I also want everybody to remember what the Canadian said. He loves the U.S. I think I heard that.
I do for a lot of reasons, and it's the easiest place in the world to build wealth. just because there's a definite protection and support of the individual's pursuit of wealth. And I think that's awesome. And I believe deeply in capitalism. Unbridled capitalism, maybe not. There has to be some regulation to control that beast. But you need it to grow and accelerate and make your lows brief, and overall growth over time high. Canada's a great country. Obviously, has huge benefits. Love Canada. Was born here. Feel very like I owe Canada so much because what it's given me. That being said, participating in the economy, found that there was a lack of competition and support of competition in Canada, not unlike the U.S. And that's because it's relative to the U.S. I'm looking at the U.S. and it's relatively easy to build wealth. You don't have much excuse in Canada, the U.S. for becoming rich. You really don't. Some of us were just lucky. Most of us were just lucky being born here. Great deal of us. So, supply and demand. In the United States, as Pip was saying, great point about aging population. Aging population consumes less. When you get older, you consume less. That was one big problem in Japan, but that's a problem that Canada and the United States are facing, right? Because people are living longer, and if they live longer and they consume less, that's going to be a problem for a lot of different things. Because as you age, there's some government subsidies that you're entitled to, and you should get them because you paid into them. But they don't, when they first created these, Social Security and Canadian Pension Plan, they were looking at 65, and the population overwhelming majority would ever make it 65, so they were paying into it. And they were never seeing it. And it was easy. There was, we're talking early years, there's surplus, right? There's more money there than you need. But as the population, like 65 is nothing now. 65 is a joke. That's why they're talking about increasing the age, of retirement when you're eligible because of that. We're going to run out of money because the population, as Pip said, it's not growing very fast. And there's going to be some serious problems. Now, the government has a lot of tools to help manage those problems. But ultimately, the biggest thing you can hope for in an economy is a strong consumption level like the United States. You need the consumption. You don't have to say it, right? You don't have to convince an American to buy a third TV or a fourth TV, where you go to these other countries where wealth is brand new. It's still brand new to them. You're having a harder time explaining to them why it's a good idea to have, a TV, not only in your rec room, but a TV in your toilet, a TV in your bedroom, a TV, a TV everywhere. Like this is it. But it's changing. I mean, China is very much going in that direction. I don't think China's really going to cross over until they give individual rights to the people, but that remains to be seen. So we also talked about, and if anybody has any questions about anything we've talked about so far about the economy or, unemployment, please, you can type that in. The other thing we wanted to talk about, because we said we were going to talk about the 5 rules. So the one rule I think that is very important and easiest to understand of the 5 rules is actually the 3rd rule. So if you remember, the first rule is all wealth is created. Number 2, you can't trap wealth. Number 3, supply and demand determines the value of all things. And the last 2 rules are really expansion rules. You need access to debt and you need win-win transactions, right? The entrepreneur has a 6th rule, which is you solve problems, you get paid. That's really what it comes down to. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. If you fashion yourself a entrepreneur, then you must accept the fact that entrepreneurs solve problems, and the bigger the problem, the bigger the paycheck. And entrepreneurs seek to solve problems. So they look for big problems, not little ones. Unlike the consuming population, which are employed by people, which is not bad. It's not a bad thing. It's just something they don't buy into, so to speak. They're actually, dependent on the job. And some people don't like that, and they call that, some form of slavery, or, they're owned by their jobs. And there's some truth there. There is some truth there, but there is a reciprocal relationship between employer and employee. And I mean, they need each other to survive. So going back to the rules, the 3rd rule is you need supply and demand. Supply and demand determine the value of all things. Not only all that means is, that if a lot of people want a small supply of something, the price is high. If a lot of people, if there's a large, product or service and nobody wants it, the price goes down. The bigger, more concerning thing to recognize is the price will go down to zero if nobody wants it. Like if nobody, zero people want that product or service, that product or service is worthless. It's worth zero. And I think that's the hard part for people to apply to their life. They get that, and I think people understand that, right? Supply and demand. They understand that. But ultimately, when you apply that to your real life, you must accept that if that's true, then you can't trap wealth, right? If you buy something, you can't believe that there's going to be a value in there that can't go to zero. Because if supply and demand is true, then if nobody wants that thing that you have, then it's worthless. And that's a big deal when we cross over from supply and demand to trapping wealth, that particular one. It means pursuing net worth is fruitless. It's something that we shouldn't necessarily be pursuing, right? The pursuit of net worth is measuring your wealth by the stuff that you own and have no debt on. And the challenge with that is if you can't trap wealth, right? If you can't trap wealth, then why are we so obsessed with ownership and having things and no debt? And I think Pip's mentioned this a couple times. Real investors, I learned it from him. Real investors own nothing. That's what it comes down to. Real investors own nothing. There's a reason they don't own anything. They control things because ownership is the worst position to be in because you can't trap wealth. And if you own it, you're taking a lot of liability for very little in the way of payoff. So we used to joke around me about owning things and doing payments on them. And I used to say, and I would, and I mean this, I would, first, let me say this. I own a house, and I own a house because I love my wife. That's why I own a house. If it was up to me, I'd be renting. I think it's a much better position to be in financially. And I would never desire to own a house. I don't think that it's good financially for anybody. That's a big deal for a lot of people. And I get that. And I think, you've heard Pip and myself and us students of Robert Kiyosaki say the same thing. Your house is a liability. So let's go a step further. We used to talk about cars. Someone asked me, would you buy a car? Would you take payments on your car or pay cash? And I would actually, if they would let me, I'd do 100-year payment plan on a car. So the car would disintegrate before I paid it off. And I mean that. I don't want to own the car. I don't want to own the house. I don't want to own things. Ownership, to me, is one of the biggest lies actually perpetrated on the middle class. I think it's a horrible, horrible thing that's been thrust upon the middle class and the working class, that it's a good idea because it creates the most financial strain and challenges. In my view, one of the worst things you can do is pursue net worth. It's the slowest, in my view, right? In my view, it's the slowest way to build wealth. Slowest way to build wealth is try to own everything. Buy a house, investment property, and not buy another one so you pay that one off. Oh, you know what I mean? How many years? And you're pursuing cash flow, which is a great thing. We love cash flow. Pip talks about cash flow all the time. We love cash flow, but the ultimate thing that we measure is return on investment. Would you agree, Pip?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's just a matter of the rule of 72. You've got to be able to understand how quickly your money is going to double. And if your money's going to double, it's going to take, the rule of 72 basically says, if you're getting 6% on your money, it's going to take 12 years for your money to double. And that's sorry to cut you off, brother. That's Pip's talking about the 6% we're making on property, which is about average, somewhere in the 5-6 range. But the net is really 1%. So you're looking at 72 years. 72 years. Well, even if you get 6%.
Yeah.
Maybe you had some good years. Now, some people put their money in mutual funds and things like that. By the time you get fees, by the time you look at inflation, by the time you look at all the other stuff that go into it, you're not getting 6.
No, you're not.
That's the bad part about it is somebody will tell you, mutual fund manager, we got them a 6% return, we got them a 12% return. Well, yeah, you did on paper in one way to look at it. But if you take in all the account of your taxes, you take in the fact your inflation, time value of money, and all these other things, you really did not make that much return. And
No.
so, and you really got to see the only way to really determine your wealth is that cash flow coming in every month.
Yeah.
And that's what you can take to the bank and spend, or not to the bank. You can take it anywhere and spend. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Sam.
Yeah, I was gonna. There's something we need to ask ourselves. If incomes in the United States and Canada over the last 50 years is somewhere around, if you're lucky, it's pretty much flat. But let's say it's 1%. So if your income net after inflation goes up 1% a year, that's more money you have. 1% a year. How can property go up 10% a year? How can stock market go up even 8% a year? How's that even possible? How can you expect the market to go up 20 and 30% if people who actually live there are making 1% more per year? So how does it go up? And there's two causes that really make real estate. We'll talk about real estate go up in markets. So number one is employment. So new employment. My apologies, new employment. So when a factory or a business or even a Walmart, some new business comes in, which unfortunately Walmart takes out some business, and as others do. But if the net growth of employment goes up because of a new business, that new money goes into the economy. It didn't exist before. So that new money creates a supply problem, more relative to cost. This is the reason why. So the same people have more money bidding on the same goods and services. So the same goods and services, there's more people that have money that are bidding on them. The prices are going to go up, right? That's like an inflation, right? And this is very interesting. Is there's inflation between states. Like there's a different cost of living, in Indiana than there is in New York. So it's inflation. I mean, there's an inflation there living in New York. Your buying power in New York is much less than it is, say, in Indiana, or Denver to Florida, right? It's your buying power, right? So if your income's going up 1% a year, how are you gonna afford to pay 10 and 15 and 20% increases on your house? Why would you think that was normal? The second reason just let's go back to unemployment. So employment. So when a new business comes in and that new money comes into that community and pushes prices up, how long do we consider a new job a new job? Well, 1 year, right? Only 1 year. It's only a new job for 1 year, because after that, what will their increase be every year? Well, 1%. Net. They're going to make 1% more. So they're with the rest of the population. So that initial burst is great, but unfortunately, has a problem sustaining it because your income is only going up 1%. The other thing that creates a huge, impact on real estate prices is foreign investment. So foreign investment, just so we're clear, does not mean that you're from another country. It just means you don't live there. So if you're from California and you invest in Utah, you're a foreign investor. You don't live in Utah, right? You're putting money in the Utah community, a community in Utah, but you're putting it in a place there, and that money wasn't born there. It wasn't created there. Wealth wasn't created there. So that new money coming into there pushes prices up, because that's new money in the system. Money supply, right? That's what it is. Go ahead, Pep.
Well, that's why Denver, Colorado prices are insane right now.
Exactly.
Because all the money that was coming from it, and I obviously don't know every state, but the majority of the move-ins into Colorado were from California. Cost of living in California got so high they could start buying more property, and Denver's a beautiful area. It's literally one of my favorite places in the country, right by the mountains, great outdoors, a lot of great places to live there. But that's why the prices in Denver went up astronomically, because of that money coming in from other places. The amount of jobs in Denver didn't go up as quickly, and so you shouldn't see that spike in real estate. So that's exactly what Sam's talking about.
Yeah, Vancouver, same thing in Canada. Vancouver, a lot of foreign investment from all over the world. Asia in particular was a huge investor in the United States. And these are cash buyers, by the way. These are people coming up paying cash, and paying 20, 30, 40, 50%, more, pushing the prices up. Paying an extra $100,000 on a listing or $200,000 is not crazy when the market's like that. So foreign investors come in. Now, two things are important to keep in mind. So when that money comes into Vancouver, comes into Denver, it's leaving somewhere. So it's creating an impact in California. It's creating an impact, say, from Toronto or China, where a lot of the money's coming. That money's leaving. So when that money's gone, it creates an impact in the local market and obviously increases, values in the market it goes to, the new home. Here's the problem. When prices get driven up by that foreign investors, they're like locusts, right? They come in, they destroy the crops, devour them, and then take off and go somewhere else. So eventually the investors go from, say, Vancouver to out east, which is happening in Canada. They go from California to Denver, and now they're thinking Denver's tapped out. I got to go to another market. Maybe I'm gonna, check out Florida. Everybody's moving to Florida. Why is everyone moving to Florida? And I mean, there's lots of reasons. But I think if you follow the money, you get a better understanding of migration patterns in the United States and Canada. Just follow the money. And one of the things that is great about the state of Florida is that you have more money at the end of the year. They just have a better tax, benefits to the individual. Pip can speak better than I can to that, but there's been big moves in the recent years in Florida that have changed things. Is that correct, Pip?
Well, Florida, Texas, even Nevada to a certain extent, that have no state income taxes. And I mean, I just think a little bit better business cycles. On top of that, weather does play a lot into it. I mean,
Sure.
I'm looking at, and I'm watching the chat box go by, and this is awesome, by the way, Sam. And I'm going to come back to this in a second, but we've got a ton of Canadians on here. Obviously, numerous Americans on here, and I just got my first hello from Perth, Australia.
There
which
you
is
go.
pretty good. So Caroline is talking to is watching from Perth, Australia. You can't. I can't even imagine the reach of the internet. It's just insane.
You know what? Go ahead. Go. Sorry. Go ahead.
You could say what I'm getting at is, obviously Texas, Florida, Nevada, places like that. I think there's going to be some huge growth in places like Georgia and Alabama, only because the weather's above average. Even look at Canada. I mean, the weather's not as good in Canada, but I think it's like 90% of the people live within an hour of the US border. And I don't think it's because they like Americans. I think it's just because it's warmer. I mean, you get up to Edmonton and further north. I mean, it's insanely cold and a long, long winter for those guys. So yeah, a lot of it's supply and demand, but a lot of it's just, is some weather related. So people always ask me, where are the best plays in the US? I'm invested in Florida. I love Texas as a place to invest, but I think Alabama is going to be, because the price points are low. It's got some good jobs. NASA has a bunch of jobs here. So we got some high tech jobs. There's good, and the weather's way above average, and it's not overbuilt yet. So there's going to be a huge opportunity. I love the state of Alabama when we talk about investing. So
Australia, wonderful place to study for real estate, about the real estate market in Australia. Have one of the highest incomes around the world, individual incomes in Australia. It's astounding. Australia's individual income is probably, it's more than, I'm sure it's more than the income, household income of the United States, and I'm pretty sure it's more than more, maybe not more than Canada, pretty close. But it's individual income in Australia is higher than the household income, pretty sure, in the United States. That's how much income's there. Now, the cost of living is huge. I mean, it's a lot to live in the major metropolitan areas in Australia. One of the things that I found interesting, spending some time in Australia, was a program they have called negative gearing. And it's not new. Yeah, right. It's not new to the United States and Canada, but it's not as promoted. I've never felt there's been a huge push with negative gearing for several years. I don't know how long it's been going on. But basically, the idea of negative gearing is buying a property that has a negative cash flow for the tax benefits. And this is a heavily promoted program as a way to build wealth for build your net worth in retirement, really. And that it's okay. Now, you imagine if you're being supported and getting tax breaks for buying property that loses money at the end of the month. What's that going to do to your real estate market? And that's one of the things, one of the many things, but that's a big thing, I believe, that really pushes up the real estate market in Australia, is the idea it's okay to negative cash flow. And it does in Canada and the United States. I've just never seen it promoted as much as Australia. In Canada and the United States, you will go to accountants and they'll say, hey, it's okay to lose money on that property. The tenants are paying your mortgage. Don't worry about you're losing a few $100. We'll take that money and we'll use it against your income, and you'll be in a lower tax bracket. Now, and I'm not saying there's not benefit to that, but I think that it's difficult to support an idea that it's a good idea to invest things in things that lose money to save money in your taxes. Something Pip and myself, when we talk about taxes, neither one of us are tax experts in any shape or form, and certified in nothing when it comes to tax. Right? But we will tell you this. Think paying more taxes is not a bad thing at all. It means you're making more money. And if you want to pay no taxes, we got a tip for you, Pip. What's the tip for not making taxes? The tip is don't make any money. It's really easy. You don't want to pay taxes? Stop making money. That's the way you pay no tax. Otherwise, pay the appropriate tax, obviously, and manage that. And that's important. So we don't believe in, tax avoidance or, none of that stuff. So, and you know what? It's been a serious problem because of COVID and stuff. A lot of the governments have given people more time to manage that because there's been a huge shock to that. So the tax revenue for most of the countries around the world is going to be, hit hard. But just going back to Australia, great place, great market. Real estate is often raging there. Some interesting things. If you ever want to look at an interesting market, I would say Australia is a wonderful one to look at. And Pip mentioned Japan. It's a great historical one to look at in Japan. But it's amazing. It's amazing how much the government participates in the how real estate's managed and bought. And let's not forget, obviously the money supply through the banks. I was explaining that to a friend of mine about the banks, and they all thought it should be illegal what the banks are doing. They just think it should be illegal how they can do fractional reserve lending. I think we talked about that last time, didn't we, Pip? Fractional reserve lending.
Well, I think we did a little bit, but you never know what I mean, I can't remember what you talk about ever.
I can't remember what we said 5 minutes ago, right?
I'm completely lost.
What did we say at the beginning of the show?
We're already about 10 minutes. We're already almost 10 minutes over time. Right?
Okay, why don't we do this? Any questions that you picked up, Pip, that anybody's interested in? Is there something?
No, most people are just talking about how warm it is where they're at. And obviously it's not London, Ontario where they're at.
It's freezing here.
What's the temperature there?
Yeah. It's too cold. That's the temperature.
Cold.
And with it feels like that's our favorite thing. It's -1, feels like -10. Like today it was +4, feels like -3 or something like that. Don't even get that. Don't even get how the temperature could be one thing and it feels like. I guess it's the wind chill.
I got 80 in Southwest Florida. I'm looking at 38 in.
Come on, guys. Come on.
38's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So
come on.
If we got a lot of different calculators or should I say thermostats that we're working on here.
You know what we need? You know what we need, Pip? We need to get somebody on the show that thinks we're crazy about this whole wealth thing. We need someone to come on and argue about how wealth disparity is bad, which we don't believe. How billionaires and millionaires are bad, which we don't believe. We need someone, because there's a lot of people out there that don't, that are strong and have some great, facts and figures about wealth disparity, which if we haven't told you, we think wealth disparity is a good thing. The kind that we're talking about. Obviously, we don't want people to struggle, but we believe that wealth disparity is necessary for a vibrant and growing economy. If you had no wealth disparity and it wasn't growing, it would be very bad. So we want wealth disparity. We want an imbalance of wealth. We want the ability for people to move between those levels. Not easily, because that wouldn't make sense. But there needs to be a path there. So I'm sure there's people out there that think, that's all crazy, and we need to get our heads examined, because wealth disparity and because the gap between the rich and the poor is growing, and this is, I'm telling you, for us, this is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. We don't think that's bad at all. It doesn't mean we're not compassionate or recognize the struggle of being financially strained and poor, but making the rich suffer for that is not a solution in our view. So I'd love someone to come on and argue the other side. Is there anybody?
Unfortunately, nobody's going to be able to come on because we're on Facebook Live and this is a one-way
Well,
conversation.
well,
right?
we can zoom somebody. I don't want to. I don't want to. You know.
We'll Zoom somebody. So
Sure.
everybody that's listening out there, anybody
Yeah.
that watches this, I think a lot of you guys are going to have similar opinions to Sam and myself in many regards to money. But
Yes.
if you have somebody that would love to come on, I mean, a relative,
Please.
a friend, a family member, whatever, that has a different point of view, I'd be glad to Zoom them into this. And we won't prepare anything. We'll just talk.
Yeah. We'll just talk. It's just conversation, right? You know, I mean, it doesn't. It could be about any of the facets of wealth because that's what we like to talk about, or real estate, or affordable. You know, if you wanted to talk about affordable housing or unemployment, things like that. Because I think what you'll find, and this is the thing, this is the wealth debate, and Pip and I agree on just about everything, but we know that our views are not shared. Are not shared with I'd say the majority of the population, Pip. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I would have to say of all the places that I've traveled, and I've been in all over the world, that the majority of people, that the US is probably the one country where it's still about 50-50.
Yeah.
Whereas I guarantee Canadians, Australians to a, and Australia,
Europe.
but I mean a lot of other places that all over Europe, definitely very much, I would say, fall on the other side of that, where they look more for an even keel rather than rich and poor kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And we even have a lot of politics, and I don't want to get into politics. We have a lot of politicians here that are looking at other countries, Denmark, places like that, and saying the U.S. needs to be more like that.
No.
And I mean, we obviously all have our opinions, and
Yeah.
I truly believe that whatever I produce, whatever I benefit whether it's my community, my neighborhood, my city, my county, my state, my country, I should get paid accordingly for it.
Sure.
If I provide no value, then I shouldn't get paid any more than anybody else.
Yeah.
And so, well, Sam, we are 15 past the time. I'm going to say a couple of things. First of all, love all the comments from people. This is great. And what's even better, Sam, we got people talking to one another.
Yeah, that's good.
Each other in a while. So it's pretty cool that we're looking all the way. I'm seeing all 4 points of the U.S., all across Canada, people I haven't seen or heard from in years, which is cool. That's awesome. Pretty cool. I'm trying to think of the last time I said something to Clayton, who's on here. He's a young guy I mentored probably 6 years ago, something like that. Nice. And obviously all the way from Australia. This is pretty cool to see all this stuff. So with the exception of Steve Hipple on here, love everybody on the call. This is awesome. There's always going to be one person in there. And so love that. Bob, great to see you. And I won't shout out everybody because I know I'll miss somebody. So really like having you guys on here. Couple of things I'm going to ask you guys to do. If you, I'm always disappointed when you wrap up, as I want to keep learning. There you go.
That's awesome.
That means you want to come back and hear more. So
yes,
let me do some housekeeping real quick.
Sure.
We're gonna do these, and we won't try to miss any more weeks. And I'm not even gonna put pen down a day because it's either gonna be Tuesday or Wednesday. Those are our goals. And so we will definitely do one next week, and that'll be our first show of the new year. And so we will definitely. It takes Pip 10 minutes to say goodbye. That's what they're saying right now. See, Steve, can we not determine who?
It's so true. When we're on calls with Pip, we're like, okay, he says, okay, well, I don't want to keep you. I don't want to keep you any longer, guys. So I'm just going to wrap up. And
15 minutes later, we've wrapped up.
15. Oh, my gosh. Steve's on the call. He knows. But anyways, go ahead.
Anyway, if you guys could share this with other people, we would appreciate it. If you could, if you watch it, if you put some likes on there, any of that kind of stuff to let us know. If there's anything you guys want us to talk about, please put in there as well. Sam, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, if you guys want to send us, a video, appropriate video, but talking about, talking about, some video you picked up from the news or some news source. It doesn't have to be a news source. Something you think would be interesting to as a topic, or somebody makes a statement and you think it's interesting or should be talked about, or it just upsets you. Send it to us, and we could use that to play on the show, and that we'd love to see those. So just as long as they're appropriate. So if you want to send a video of yourself ranting, I would love to. I would love to see that. All right, Festivus.
For the rest of us. There we go. So I'm going to say this. I'm sure it's not politically correct, but I really don't care. Happy New Year to everybody, but also I hope you all had a Merry Christmas. We will see you guys next week on the Wealth Debate. I'm going to say it again. Happy New Year, because everybody's saying that to us on here.
Good.
Please share this video with other people.
Awesome.
Let us know what you want for future topics, and we will see everybody next week.
Next week. Have a great week.